Chapter 42. The Calm. The sixth level. The sixth level of the Hells was unlike all the other levels Krynen had seen. As he, Karsten, and Malinka emerged from the portal, they found that the sixth level had a dark sky full of twinkling stars. Krynen looked up at them for a moment, filled with wonder, and then turned and stared at the giant orange, green, and blue moon that took up nearly half the sky. Everyone's eyes were transfixed on the moon, but it didn't take long for Krynen to realize something. They weren't looking at a moon. They were looking at Duran itself. Krynen stammered, finding it immensely difficult to speak. He couldn't pull his vision from the planet. It was as if there was a magnetism drawing his eyes to it.
Home,
Malinka whispered as she slipped her fingers between Krynen's. The two stood, surrounded by those who had been damned for centuries, and stared in silent admiration at the only home they had ever known.
do you think it's real?
I doubt it, Krynen whispered. His boots were planted on the green, grassy ground, and as he looked around himself, he saw lush trees and vegetation. The only place he could have possibly been was Igo, the green moon that had illuminated the sky every single night of his life. If it is real, then that means...
Igo is the Hells?
Malinka finished Krynen's sentence.
If it's real, it means everything is really happening. All the bodies, the magic, death, and blood?
It can't be. Krynen shook his head. It's all too crazy, too advanced. Our world couldn't make something like this. I should say your world did not create such a thing, Sage's voice rang out. Mine did. Yours, Krynen repeated. The great minds of the ancients, Sage continued. We created all this. We dreamt it, designed it, and made it a reality. I should say it truly was a beautiful thing. Once. Before the Empire, Krynen mumbled. Before Dura Ana. Indeed. Sage sighed heavily. I have seen it all, Krynen. Everything. I have been to the stars, seen other worlds. The humans showed me everything they knew. I wanted to bring that to my home, to make it as amazing as I could. I fought the Church in the Sin Wars. I commanded much of the AOC, but we just could not win against the ignorance of the people. People want to believe what is not real. They want to think that something that does not exist is more beautiful and desirable than all that does. How do you fight that, Krynen? How do you win and survive against such delusions? You wipe it out, Krynen found himself saying. Like a fucking weed. You burn it, poison it, cut it down. Whatever it takes. A bit morose, but not wrong. Perhaps you will succeed where I failed. A remorseful-sounding sage said. Your path is greatness, Krynen. Only greatness. I truly want that for you. Krynen remained silent. He squeezed the handle of his sword and looked down at the grass at his feet. He did not care about greatness. He just wanted to be home again. His eyes wandered back up toward Duran, and he spoke. Am I truly on Igo? He asked. No, Sage replied. It is all a computer program. Igo is much more beautiful than what you see right now. Krynen sighed and looked over at Malinka. It's not real. It's all computer shit.
Well, brothers, fuck it all then.
Malinka sighed.
It's still pretty, I guess.
So, where do we go from here? How do we get back to reality? You are on the cusp of it. Sage's voice sounded hopeful and excited. The sixth level of the Hells is where the prisoners are sent for good behavior. I can summon the portal to the seventh and final level of the Hells for you. This is the only level where I can do so, for I should say anyone has the ability to depart from this level at will. but I don't trust you to be able to figure it out on your own. You can leave whenever you are ready. Krynen, this may be the last time we speak before we meet. If that is the case, then, well, I should say that I rather look forward to meeting you. Yeah, Krynen replied, nodding his head. I look forward to it too. To his surprise, his words were honest. He really was interested in finding out who Sage was and why he had chosen to guide Krynen back home. The portal is opening. The final level may be difficult. The demons have amassed there and are waiting for you. But I should say that once you arrive, you will not be alone in your fight. Lucas and I have called out to all the prisoners, told them that they can fight, told them that you will lead them in a battle for vengeance. Okay. Krynen stood and reached his hand out toward Malinka. She grabbed it and he pulled her up. As she got to her feet, the portal to the final level opened. Can we have just a few minutes? Krynen asked Sage. Yes, Sage replied. His tone sounded warm and a bit jovial. Send the prisoners through, and you two say what you need to. Don't fucking watch, Krynen snapped. I wouldn't dare, Sage replied. Goodbye, Krynen. At that, he was gone, and Krynen turned to Karsten. Can you take these prisoners to go through the portal? Krynen asked him. We'll be right behind you. I need to... Shut up, Karsten said, giving Krynen a pat on the back. I'll take care of it, partner. You take a little time for yourself and kick boots with that girl. No, not that, Krynen hissed. Karsten's entire body shook with laughter, and he nodded. You behave, Karsten said with the tip of his hat. You're all right, partner. I'll see you on the other side. You are too, Karsten, Krynen said with a nod. Karsten smiled and turned to the prisoners. All right, saddle up, he shouted at them all. Time to get through the portal so these two can fuck in peace. Oh, brothers, damn it all, Krynen said as his face flushed red. Malinka burst into laughter, and Karsten gave her a wink. After a few moments, everyone was gone except for Krynen and Malinka. So, here we are, Krynen said when he was sure the two of them were alone.
Here we are,
Malinka replied. She took a seat on the soft green grass and looked up at Duran.
So close to home.
Yeah, Krynen whispered as he sat next to her. He looked up at the planet and sighed, allowing himself just a moment of rest before he dove headfirst into the chaos he knew was waiting for him in the 7th level. Malinka laid her head on Krynen's shoulder and closed her eyes.
You know, it would be nice if we didn't have to leave this place,
she said softly.
We could just sit here, together, and stare up at the stars.
That might get boring after a while, Krynen replied. Malinka lifted her head from his shoulder, and he snorted a laugh when he looked over and saw the stink eye she was giving him. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I could do this. For a long time.
You better,
Malinka pouted. She leaned back on her arms, grabbed Krynen's shoulders, and pulled him down so that the back of his head rested on her lap. He was apprehensive at first, but when he was laying down, he felt more comfortable than he had in years.
Thank you, Krynen,
Malinka said to him as the two of them lay there. He heard her sniffle a bit and turned his head, looking up at her as a tear dripped down off her chin and onto her chest. Krynen sat up and locked his eyes with hers. What's wrong? Krynen asked. He reached up and wiped another rogue tear away. Are you okay?
This has all been such a... I do not know. It's been terrible, but it's also been...
I get it, Krynen said tenderly. Seeing you again has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Sure, it all happened in the worst place possible, but I don't know. Maybe if you hadn't been here, then I would have given up a long time ago. Malinka grinned.
It's nice that I'm one of the best things ever, but You apparently have never had double chocolate fudge cake.
Grynon's face wrinkled up and his nostrils flared. I like white cake, but I'll take steamed cabbage over cake any day.
You are fucking gross,
Malinka said before bursting into laughter. Grynon joined her and nodded his head. I like what I like, Grynon said in defense of himself.
Yeah?
Malinka asked. A look of longing was in her eyes, and Grynon cautiously nodded his head. Yeah. He leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The tension keeping Malinka sitting straight dissipated, and Grynon reached an arm up and cradled the back of her head. Slowly he lowered her down to the grass and passionately kissed her. Their kiss lasted as long as they wanted this time, and nobody was there to interrupt them. After a few minutes, Grynon pulled back and pressed his forehead against Malinka's. Before anyone ruins this, he whispered, his lips gently trembling against hers, I just want you to know.
Yes?
Malinka whispered. She breathed heavily and her heart pounded in her chest. Grynon reached up and stroked her cheek. I love you, Malinka, he whispered. I have since we were kids. Goosebumps spread over his arms, and Malinka felt a cold shiver come over her as well. She wrapped her arms around him and pulled him close to her.
I love you too, Grynon,
she replied softly.
I really do.
Grynon smiled and laid down next to her. She wrapped her arms around him, hugging him from behind as she rested her forehead against the back of his head. Grynon grabbed her hands, and for a moment, the two just laid there in silence.
We can't lay here forever,
Malinka whispered into Grynon's ear.
We have to go.
Just 5 more minutes, Grynon whined.
Nope.
Malinka let go of him and sat up. Grynon groaned and pushed himself to his feet. He reached his hand out to Malinka. She grabbed it and he pulled her up. Grynon leaned in and gave her one last kiss on the cheek, and they turned and started walking toward the portal. As they approached, however, a second portal appeared, and Eon stepped out of it. Hello, my friends, he growled as he approached the two. I do hope I am not once again interrupting a tender moment between the two of you. 'Twould be a great shame to impede on young love. He threw his hand out, and a powerful force pushed Grynon onto his back. 'Tis a great shame that you felt compelled to abandon me the way you did, Eon declared as he approached. Why, I have never wished to do any more than help you. Malinka, get out of here! Sage, are you still there? Grynon shouted as he found himself immobile on the ground. Sage!
Yes,
Sage replied.
What is going on?
Eon is here, Grynon croaked. He's gone crazy. Crazy? Eon repeated, looking up at the stars. Sage, why, Sir Genius Lynx, my old friend. Is that you? How does he know? Grynon asked.
Damn it all!
Sage yelled.
Grynon, he has me locked out. I cannot help you. Let him go, Dryak.
Ah, worry not, my friends, Eon said as he knelt and stroked Grynon's cheek. I will bring Grynon and his muse no harm, for you see, he has liberated me from this prison. Without him, I may never have been given the opportunity to establish my kingdom on Duran. For all this, I thank you all.
Dryak, stop it!
Sage hissed.
Leave him alone. Get out of here. You do not deserve to come back.
Oh, Sir Genius, Eon smiled, holding his arms wide toward the planet of Duran above him. Not only will I come back to the planet, but I will rebuild it all in my image. I will restore order to the world. I will obliterate all that you and all that Govia has created. All will have no choice but to fall to their knees and declare Eon as their king and savior.
Dryak, Eon, that is enough,
Sage shouted.
If you come here, I promise you I will find you and purge you. You know my power exceeds yours. Stand down and leave the children alone.
This conversation bores me. Eon waved a hand, and Sage could be heard no more. He looked at Krynen and smiled a warm smile. I will always consider you a brother for what you have done for me, Krynen Jameso. Fear not, for although I may seem wicked, know that I am just. Eon reached out his hand and beckoned Krynen and Malinka toward the portal to the 7th level. Shall we? Eon asked with a smile. The end is upon us. Let us march forth and claim our destinies. Krynen felt whatever force was holding him down recede, and he quickly sat up. He wanted to draw his sword and attack Eon, but he knew he wouldn't stand a chance. Instead, he looked at Malinka. She wore a look of apprehension, and her hands trembled. I'm here, Krynen whispered as he leaned into her. It's okay. At that, he slipped his hand into hers, and the two of them followed Eon through the portal.